The Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Program has welcomed the appointment of Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane as the new Minister of Higher Education. Nkabane replaces Dr. Nzimande, who is now in charge of the Science, Technology and Innovation portfolio. ISFAP plans to hold a meeting with Nkabane to discuss pressing challenges facing the higher education sector, particularly student funding. The group's Sifanele Biyela joins us now for more. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. Do you actually know the new minister, or are you just being courteous because you are a stakeholder?
We are actually aware of her and a bit of her history prior to being the Minister in Higher Education. We're also aware of her qualifications and her capabilities. So I think it's not a personal relationship that we have with her, but as a stakeholder, it implores us to then get to know her more now in her appointment.
Did you have issues with Dr. Nzimande?
I wouldn't say issues as such, because in its establishment, ISFAP ran as a pilot supported by the Department of Higher Education and Training. And subsequent to that, we then got our own registration as an NPO. And we've been communicating to say we have data insights that we feel could contribute positively to the funding gap that currently exists in the tertiary education space. So I wouldn't say difficulties as such, but I mean, there were situations that made it difficult for us to have a continuing relationship post the pilot.
You are being polite, aren't you?
Not really. I think post-COVID, the recovery was difficult for a lot of institutions, and I wouldn't want to say government was outside of those issues that were faced post-COVID. So I think it's a matter of consistently trying to build those relationships and make them more sustainable in terms of addressing the needs that we have in the higher education space.
Funding is a big issue. We're still talking about, NSFAS issues.
Yeah.
NSFAS saying, please don't chuck these students out. On the other hand, the problem seemingly is really not being resolved. What is your take? What do you think is going on there, or what went wrong, shall we say?
I think when you have access to funds, there needs to be a level of awareness of the needs of the people that you're trying to use that pool of funding to address. So I think it was a misunderstanding of just how dire the situation is for the students that needed the funding, and we cannot look past the issues that pertained to administration, and you wonder if these were risks that could have been preempted, if there could have been more proactivity in approaching these risks, because it would have made their mitigation and the timing of them being addressed more efficient, giving us then time to respond to them, to support our students prior to the issues becoming so big. So I think it's an administration issue. It's a lack of awareness of the needs or the recipients or potential recipients of what you have been given as a task to make available.
Misunderstanding, or someone just didn't do their job, or was incompetent, or simply didn't care?
I'd say it could be a mixture of a lot of things, because where we stand, all we have as an understanding is the feedback that we got when questions were being asked. So none of us really know what went on behind closed doors that led to certain decisions that made the issues that we're currently facing now as big as they are. So I think it will always fall back on competence. So competence for me is always a question to say, it's not that you're not competent forever, but maybe at that point in time, your skills and capabilities were not aligned with what the role required at that point in time. And the amount of, sometimes we can be ignorant on purpose, and sometimes we're ignorant because of lack of awareness. So we need to also draw that line to say, when we look into the source of these issues, what can we draw the biggest cause or the biggest causal issues to? So I feel it's a component of each of the things that you've mentioned. However, some of them are personal things and personal decisions that only the people that made them can give us an honest answer.
Do you get a sense, having seen, heard him, that the new administrator, Premier Nomvalo, is on top of issues, or perhaps on his way there?
I think as his experience, I'm fond of how he works. I'm familiar with how he works. He's a member. He was in the professional body as a CEO, and I think you cannot spend so many years there and not grasp even a little bit of compliance requirements and respect for compliance, respect for integrity and ethics. So I would support the view that says he does know what needs to be done, and he does know the severity of the issues that currently exist and the time pressure that he's under to make those amends when it comes to society and the students at large. So I truly believe that there will be an improvement with him as an administrator, purely because his experience and understanding would give me confidence in terms of the role that he can play in making the situation better.
But in the little time that he has been there, is there something you can point to that gives you a little bit, almost a little bit of hope that perhaps he's on his way there, or at least he is alive to, the realities of what he has to deal with?
I think his decisiveness with the administration of the allowances, for me, was a step in the right direction to say, let us remove familiarity from this picture and go to the financial institutions, go to the institutions of higher education directly and say, listen, this is the issue we're facing, we're under time pressure, therefore remove the middleman for now so that we can resolve these issues as quickly as we can. So I think the decisiveness for me, the timing of those decisions and the manner in which it decided to roll them out was an impressive move for me that signaled that we definitely are moving in the right direction in terms of resolving whatever it is that may have led to the organization needing to be put under administration to begin with.
Now, beyond funding, what would you say are the other or key pressing challenges facing that the new minister has to tackle?
So we always look at education in higher institutions and consider funding as the biggest issue. And what we have done as ISFAP is look at the surrounding or contributing factors to that, to say these are students that come from different homes, different backgrounds, different languages. So while having to figure out the finances in those institutions, there's also language barriers that must be, they need to be adaptable to. There's also we run a program that prides itself in supporting our students in terms of psychological issues, so mental health, where counseling is needed, things that occur in their lives outside of education that end up playing a really big role in how they perform at school. So I'd say outside of just the funding being an issue, the support for the students and giving them that comfort to say, I have the funding, all I need to do now is just to study and pass. So being that voice, that mentors, that coaches, that leads by example, that shows you that there are people who've been on this path and have done it successfully, and you can do it. If you need psychosocial help, there's a therapist available, there's psychologists available. We give you soft skills as well to not make you a technical individual in terms of being a professional, but creating a well-rounded professional that can sit in a room and articulate themselves the way that they need to in order to impress their employers, to work with clients, even in those that want to follow the route of entrepreneurship. So it helps to build a professional that we're comfortable taking into the professional world and knowing that this will be a contributor to the economic development of South Africa. So it's not just money. There are so many other layers to the support that students need.
But then is that support not linked to the financial fragility of the entire sector? In other words, to be able to provide that support for those services, you actually need money, to put it crudely.
Yeah, definitely. Initially, when you asked, you said outside of money, and I see we've brought money back.
No, but then, yeah, because, you talk about all these things that have to be done, but they come with money,
They all go back to money. So that's essentially what makes all these programs sustainable and what enables us to then see progress in what we are talking about as an organization, to say we have then found organizations that are willing to give us that money, to give the support that we have fully pictured as an organization. And now we sit with data that we are willing to share with the department to say, this is the data that we have. It's proven that with all of this support, in addition to tuition fees, all of this other support helps our students graduate in minimum required time. However, money remains the biggest issue, because it also threatens the sustainability of a lot of public benefit organizations that are in the education space, because tertiary education is expensive. If you're going to cover all aspects of it like we do, it really is an expensive endeavor and needs more than just private support.
But of course, I know that the universities are not the same.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, how are the universities doing in terms of, given that they are alive to this reality and the resources are not endless, not as money, it's not endless. Are they alive? And as people who are supposed to, that's where our brains trusts, resides in the main. Are universities realizing that it's going to take more than money to deal with the issues, the support issues that you are talking about, and are they doing the things that they need to do to address all these challenges?
They certainly are. So how we work is we have program managers at universities that are employed by the universities. However, salary contributions also come from ISFAP, because that enables us to then have that stakeholder relationship that's direct with the universities. And it also opens communication lines where we are able to meet with heads of departments, we're able to meet with VCs at these universities, heads of finance in these universities, and have honest conversations to say the need is beyond just money. As individuals, the students need support that goes beyond what you are charging as tuition. So are you also able to invest in your students beyond that? And they do. So universities have support programs that go beyond just what we know as students will have NSFAS, or they'd have an ISFAP bursary, or they'd have a bursary from somewhere else. However, there are platforms where if a student has run out or has partial funding, they can approach the university and have that conversation, and they're supported. So I think there also are universities, I can't mention names, that are working on building departments that deal solely with the mental health of their students, with the soft skills development of their students, with study methodology. There's research that they're investing money in. So I think we are all aware of what the gap is and where the problem is. It's a need that is far beyond all our efforts currently. So whoever can play a role is playing a role. However, we are not at a point where financially we can all say we are addressing the needs of the missing middle all at once and sorting everyone out.
Sifanele, Biyela, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.